With the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was traveling where to Miraj. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this within the Holy Quran in Surah Isra, in which He stated that we took our servant on an ascension towards the heaven. Within Islam, there's a few different groups. Some believe that this was a spiritual ascension, that Rasulullah was still in his bed and that his soul traveled through the skies towards Sidratul Muntaha. Another group of Muslims come forward and they say, no, this was in a dream, that Rasulullah was asleep. And in the illusion of his dream, he was in the sky, passing through towards Sidratul Muntaha. Now you see, every group within Islam has their own way of understanding the Quran and have their own way of understanding the narrations of history. We, the followers of the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt, we're very strict on what? That the Holy Prophet ﷺ said to us, that I am leaving you two weighty things. If you make this the basis of your understanding of this religion, you will never go astray. It's the words of the Prophet as we discussed yesterday. So the Prophet stops 100,000 companions at Ghadir Khum. And yes, he mentions Man kuntu mawla fahada aliyun mawla, and we will discuss that in one of the lectures in the upcoming nights. But before he says Man kuntu mawla, he says what? Inni tarikum fikum muthaqalain. I am leaving you two weighty things. Alhamdulillah, we're all very familiar with this. And he says what? Kitab Allah wa itrati Ahl Bayt. Then he says what? They will not separate from each other until they reach me at Hawza Kawthar on the Day of Judgment. Means what? Means that if you are trying to understand the Quran, then you must go to the Ahlul Bayt. That's the only way that you can understand its true merits. And at the same time, if you don't know who the Ahlul Bayt are, then you go to the Quran, because the Quran will tell you who the Ahlul Bayt is.
Subhanallah, subhanallah.
This is how Thaqalain works. Thaqalain in Arabic is two weighty things of equal caliber, of equal weight. One doesn't surpass the other, nor does one go below the other. Just as we say the Quran is ma'soom. Why? Because it's a revelation from Allah. There's no mistakes in the Quran. You will never see anybody, even outside of Islam, that will say the Quran has mistakes. So if you believe that the Quran is ma'soom and pure, and najasat cannot touch it, then you have to believe that the Ahlul Bayt are ma'soom and pure, and najasat cannot touch them. There's no mistakes within the Quran, there's no mistakes within the Ahlul Bayt. Just as the Quran was revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt was also revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, in Islam, whenever we don't understand something, we have two ways of going about it. We will either go towards the verses of the Quran. If they don't make sense, we go towards the Ahlul Bayt. Unfortunately, other groups within Islam, they have abandoned the Ahlul Bayt and they have taken just the Quran. And if you take just the Quran without the Ahlul Bayt, then you will definitely go astray. For example, if you look at spirituality in Islam, mysticism, irfan, getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The spirituality aspect of Islam is also very important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as discussed yesterday, said, what? Come close to me. Compete with one another to get close to me. That should be your ultimate aim as a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a group called the Sufis who have now come forward in their attempt to try and get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through worship and mysticism and irfan, but unfortunately, because they left the gates of the Ahlul Bayt, they have also gone astray. Why? Because Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam has referred to them. Our holy Imam has referred to them as what? He says that they are misguided individuals. Why? There's only one reason. It's because they left the Ahlul Bayt. Then there are certain people who go towards the Quran, abandoning the Ahlul Bayt, they will go astray. And the same applies if you take the Ahlul Bayt and abandon the Quran as well. It works both ways. So no, this wasn't a dream of Rasulullah, and no, this wasn't a spiritual journey where his soul left. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the glorious Quran says, Abdi. We took our slave, our person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to err in Arabic grammar now, is he? If the Prophet wanted to go on a spiritual ascension, Allah would have said, Waruhi. We took his soul up. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi went up himself in the physical bodily form, which is one of the great miracles of our Prophet. On this journey, Rasulullah is ascending between the different levels of the 7 skies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on each level, he's seeing a few different angels, a few different prophets, and he's conversing with them. He reaches one level where he sees what appears to be Ali ibn Abi Talib. So as Rasulullah would do, he would approach and he would look. And the books of narration say that Rasulullah asked, Ya Ali, Anta Ali, are you Ali? So the angel smiles back and replies, La ya Rasulullah, I am not Ali ibn Abi Talib. So what was the purpose of your creation? He says, Amirul Mu'mineen in Alam Arwah was loved by the angels so much that when Allah sent Ali ibn Abi Talib on this earth, we missed him so much. We said, Ya Allah, you've taken away Ali, give us Ali back. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me as the Shabi of Amirul Mu'mineen. Why? So that the angels could do the ziyarah of Ali in it.
Nara Hadari.
That's how much the angels missed Amirul Mu'mineen. Just like this, the Prophet is proceeding forward and forward until he reaches one station where he sees an angel quite peculiar. He's never seen an angel like this before. What was it? It was an angel that had 1,000 arms. Just try to, obviously, we can't even imagine this, but let's try it. 1,000 arms. Each arm had 1,000 hands. Each hand had 1,000 fingers. Now that is something that is very difficult to not only imagine, but to even count. So Rasulullah sees this angel, so he approaches him and he says, what is the purpose of your creation? He says, the purpose of my creation is to count every single rain that drops on this earth. Which is why I have so many hands and arms and fingers, so that I am able to take control of every single drop and then numerate that and report it back to my Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as you can imagine, we live in England, you know how much it rains. Now imagine somebody that counts the whole world and the amount of rain that has fallen. A very difficult task. So whenever somebody tells you something that they can do, what's the next question that you ask? What can't you do? When you know the ability of somebody, you'd want to know the counter ability. So Rasulullah asked him, he said, if you can count raindrops on this earth, which is numerically impossible for a human to do, is there anything that you can't count? Despite all these arms and hands and fingers. So the angel says, yes, Ya Rasulullah, there's one thing that even I can't count. That the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are so much that despite all these arms I can't count. So Rasulullah asks, what is it? And he says, it is one of the greatest worships that any of Allah's creation can do. So Rasulullah asked again, what is it? And he replied, when somebody sends salawat upon you and your family, Allah blesses that individual so much that even I can't count the blessings that befall them.
Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.